Since Europeans first arrived in Australia, the landscape has changed dramatically. In the southwest of Australia, millions of hectares of the natural environment has been all but totally cleared, mostly for farming. From satellite photos, we can see that this area is roughly the size of Victoria and more than double that of Tasmania. It'll be many years before we know the full impact of this clearing, but serious environmental damage is evident throughout the southwest, particularly with the massive rise of groundwater salinity. Not only has this rendered vast areas of land unusable, but the salt and the nutrients from farm fertilizers has moved down the river systems and into the forest. As a result, most of the rivers are virtually dead and unsuitable for either drinking or for swimming in. This is not, however, the most devastating environmental problem in the forest. Intensive, large-scale industrial logging continues despite the well-known devastation it is causing, and despite continued opposition from the majority of the people of Western Australia. Government support for the native forest logging industry is seeing the forest rapidly being turned into a tree farm, often favouring just one species. Few, if any, of the old trees used for habitat by various native birds and animals are left standing, and the few that are often poisoned by government workers, as these trees are seen as useless to the logging industry. The list of damage done by logging is endless, but most significant is the threat to already endangered fauna and flora. The threat to native flora comes from the clearing of native vegetation and the compaction of the soil by 30-ton logging machines. A second threat comes from the reckless forest burning carried out by the Department of Environment and Conservation to appease the old-school mentality in our community. These fires also wreak havoc on wildlife, leaving countless thousands every year victims of a cruel and agonizing death. The government tells us that their logging and fire regimes are all scientifically based, but that is what they said when they cleared the wheat belt, a science that not only saw the upheaval of the traditional Aboriginal owners of the land, but saw an endlessly growing area of land rendered useless through salination, and most of the rivers flowing from the area poisoned by salt and phosphate and thus blue-green algae. Methods for responsible farm management are well established, as are the means to fix the rivers. It is also well established that we have more than enough plantation timber to supply all our timber needs without having to destroy more native forest. The only reason we currently need to import timber from overseas is because we are selling enormous amounts of both plantation and native forest wood to overseas industries, usually for low-grade products such as wood chip, which is used to make cardboard. For the government to keep propping up a financially non-viable native forest logging industry and ignore the environmental health problems of the southwest is an atrocity against nature. They say a country gets the government it deserves. Well, it's time we held our politicians accountable for their determined support for environmentally destructive industries, and rather than subsidize these industries with extravagant, generous tax deductions and endless financial handouts, it would be far better for them to spend the money on repairing the damage that has taken place and managing our public land for the betterment of nature and for future generations.